George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. We're here with a history maker. Khalid Bey received the Democratic nomination for mayor after some counting of the ballots. But it's significant, first African American to be the nominated person for a major party in the city, right? And so thank you for joining me on the program, Khalid. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited for a lot of reasons, George. One, for what I believe it could mean for communities of color, what it means for the city and what can be determined as this progress. Those things are very important. And again, I mentioned before the excitement that I think my kids feel at the idea. So it's probably the best part.
Yeah. Were you aware of this history?
I wasn't paying attention, to be quite frank. When I thought back to Otis Jennings,
Mm-hmm.
I remember he received the party's designation, but he didn't win the primary. Steve Kamadian won the primary. And so I learned that, as it turns out, I was the first. So I certainly appreciate that. I'm aware of it now for sure, but I can't say that I was aware of it prior.
So now that you are the Democratic nomination, now you got work to do. So what is the work that you have to do to convince the community to elect you?
Well, the bottom line is you gotta make your case to the people. You gotta go and knock on as many doors and talk to as many people as possible to secure that voter ID, to make sure that people understand what your message is. I think it's a matter of demonstrating, not only what's been done, in the time that I've been there, but more appropriately, how that translates into the executive seat and what can be done further. And so taking a case to the people, tripling up our efforts. We have a lot of work to do, and we just got to hit the ground and keep running. That's for sure.
You're the Democratic nominated person. The incumbent is Ben Walsh, who's an independent, and of course Janet Berman, who is a Republican. Ben Walsh is very heavily financed. So how do you overcome that?
I always make the argument that money doesn't vote. I don't ever downplay the value of having money to make sure that you can compete in terms of mailers and commercials and the like. I've had a decent amount of commercials during my primary election, despite the fact that my opponent had raised money, or outraised me, if you will, 3-1. I believe I had the bigger television presence, the bigger digital presence. And so, there's certainly ways, but I'm making an effort, to raise as much money as possible. I don't think we'll struggle with raising money. But again, I think experience comes into play, George. This is my fifth election.
Your
I
fifth
know how to
election.
maneuver. I know how to get it done. So, I'm aware, but I'm not worried.
I'll get to what you want to do for the city in a minute. So is Michael Green supporting you, and is the Democrats, have they now fall in line since you are their nominated person?
Michael Green has been awesome ever since the conclusion of this race. He immediately congratulated me even before the outcome went public. He had crunched numbers, him and his team. Our numbers turned out to be the exact same as theirs. And then even after that, he was gracious enough, to do a photo and to endorse me in that respect. And we shared that, across social media. So he's been very gracious. I saw him today, obviously in the council session, and we spoke via text today. He continues to be gracious, certainly appreciated. I think it says a lot about him. As it relates to the party, certainly I've been reached out to by party leaders and a host of others. Those calls will obviously increase, but I believe we'll do a pretty decent job at unifying the party going forward. That's certainly my aspiration. And I spoke to Michael Green about that specifically, that I thought, he and I would be major components in unifying the party. He agreed. And so we got work to do. We take nothing for granted, but it's certainly our effort to unify the party going forward.
So let's look at the real deal, though. Part of the party is in the camp of your opponent.
Yeah, yeah,
That's reality.
or at least they were.
Okay, okay.
So, and that's what remains to be seen going forward. But this is where it's important, George, and why I stated initially, you have to take your case to the people.
Hmm.
The thing that we have to understand, politics creates a lot of appearances and the like, but at the crux of it all, it's about issues. What issues are important to you? What issues are most impactful to your family? What type of changes do you need to create the type of environment, to create the type of opportunity to stabilize your home, your family, to create safe neighborhoods, to have access to work opportunities and the like? This is what's most important to people, right? And so the person who I believe delivers the most practical approach to that type of solution will have a great chance of winning support of people, as certainly our intent to do so.
All right, so here you are, Khalid Bey, candidate for mayor. What is your case to the people? What is it that you're bringing to the table to make the city better? What's your platform? What are you running on?
I always make the same argument, Georgia hasn't changed, that I am a workforce type of mayor. I'm very focused on the brick and mortar of government. The fact that employing people, reducing unemployment by 1.5% to 3% is a major goal of mine in the 4-year period, first term. I believe it's very doable. Getting people access to work opportunities and ultimately reducing unemployment is key. Right alongside that, giving people opportunities for home ownership, first-time home buyers, building 1 and 2 family homes throughout our neighborhoods, bringing back our tax base, increasing our potential as neighborhoods and communities is very important. But to help a family, again, achieve stability and get a real shot at developing generational wealth by owning a home, I think it's probably the wish of many people, coming up, whether they're young families or even persons who may have never owned a home, who may be more mature than some of us. To give people that opportunity is what our responsibilities are. Making neighborhoods safe. Obviously, crime has gotten out of control. Gun violence is out of control. It fluctuates here, and it's never good to see any person become a victim of violence in any respect.
Mm-hmm.
Property crime is still through the roof. And so neighborhood safety has become one of the most paramount topics as of late, even though obviously neighborhood safety is always important. Sometimes we get comfortable, and I think we have to always be alert. We have to have, while there's a lot of contention in regards to community police relations, I don't think anybody will say, we don't need police. Obviously, if there are shots fired, if there are people breaking and entering, if there are people, ransacking cars or breaking into cars, you need public safety to stop those things from happening. And all of these things are very important.
Who do you blame for the surge in crime, especially among who or what do you attribute or who do you blame for this surge in crime, especially among very young teenagers? We know on our show we are talking to the clergy emergency response team, and so they've given their thoughts about that. But what, in your view, is the reason why we have seen this surge in crime? And do you lay that at the feet of the current administration?
I'm always honest in that respect. I will not lay it at the feet of the current administration because the same could happen to any person that's in the mayor's office. You can't really predict what any individual will do from one day to the next. The best you can do is put things in place to try to deter those opportunities for crime. You want to eliminate as many opportunities as possible. And this is where sometimes, people get it misconstrued. They say, when you talk about having a respectable police presence, building community police relations to community policing, people are so accustomed to the feeling of occupation that the idea of community policing is not really understood. And so,
You said the feeling of occupation is what you said?
Yeah, police occupation as opposed to community policing. And we have to it's our responsibility to communicate those differences to people so that they understand. So I wouldn't blame this or any administration for crime. We certainly can do things better to reduce it and or to stop it. I think that may be a difference. What I will attribute to the crime is maybe, we're coming out of COVID. Things have been a little different. Courtrooms have been shut down. They're backlogged even for violent crimes. And I think we're looking at a couple of things. One, the unfortunate misguidance of many young people, but also I think a misunderstanding of what penalties exist. I'm of the mind that some people are aware of the fact that the courts have been slow, or that people haven't been arrested and held in jail long for certain things, and you may actually have some people who believe it's a free for all. It's a frightening idea, but I'm around a lot, and you hear people talk, and so it's we have to kind of restructure, get back to business. Obviously, the DA was on TV, I think about a week ago, expressing concern for the backlog in the courtroom, but we have to make sure that the message is clear to persons who might make wrong decision because they are misunderstanding of the circumstances or not understanding the circumstances. It's not a free for all. You cannot run around shooting in residential neighborhoods and shooting at anybody. And certainly we don't want to see innocent bystanders hit. We don't want to see people involved injured. But I think it's just a matter of making sure people understand that we still live in a civilized society. Law and order is still a thing. And as much as we want our families to be safe, we should want other families to be safe as well.
Speaking of community policing, what is your reaction to the allegations brought by Officer Brandon Hanks charging the Syracuse police and brought a lawsuit suing because of what he says is racism within the department and denial of opportunity?
It's an unfortunate thing to see. Obviously, I have to be careful about what I say in the event that it goes to court and or becomes a settlement situation, because then we have to weigh in. An unfortunate circumstance that you don't want to see. And in a city and in a society where we're attempting to improve community police relations, it's tough to see what may be or could be the existence of the same type of turmoil internally.
Mm.
And it doesn't help when you're trying to smooth over community police relations, especially with communities of color. And so, the best I could say is that it's unfortunate. I don't have, with all due respect, I know Officer Hanks. I know many members of his family. I see the seriousness with which he takes his job. Being a person that's from the area, it's misguided, I think, to make assumptions, about persons or for any reason, and that's probably the most I can say about that, George. But I'll leave it at the fact that it's the type of circumstance you don't want to see, and hopefully can come to a rapid conclusion that's fair.
What everyone has said, including the police chief and the mayor, is they've echoed all of those things that you just said about how fine an officer Officer Hanks is. And I only ask you about that because obviously if you're elected, as you suggest, so this case aside, if you had, how do you address this sort of thing as the chief executive officer when you have these allegations in the department?
I am a very direct and very straightforward person, George. Obviously, if I say what I would do in this scenario, then I'm almost making a suggestion on what should happen, right? And so I don't know what legal implications exist in that respect, being a
Well, not
fiduciary agent for the city.
got you. So take this case aside. How do you deal with the police something that you would have to lead? How do you deal with allegations of racism? How do you deal with it?
Absolute zero tolerance. You're gonna have to fight your way back in this place. I don't care what you look like. If that is something that you engage in, if it is the thing is at the crux of it all, and I always say this, that racial prejudice is a personal responsibility. You can make a choice not to size a person up based on what they look like, where they come from, or anything similar. And to do anything to the contrary is not only reckless, but it's most certainly reckless in our field of work. And so, I would have absolute zero tolerance policy. And, obviously you won't know that until you see it. But I'll just say people who've ever worked with me before in any capacity know that when it comes to sticking to the rules and making sure things get done, I'm pretty straightforward in that respect, and I don't hold any punches. So it would not. While we know there's the potential for those type of things to always exist, and there's always a chance that ugliness could rear its head, I'm certainly a person that would be on top of it post haste and attempt to neutralize it as fast as possible.
When you look at this election coming up, what do you think are going to be the biggest differences between your two opponents? Because there are two, between you and your opponents, that people can say, yeah, I can see what my choice is going to be.
The tough thing about this particular election, Georgia, is that I think so many people have been dissatisfied with government and politics for so long. The lines are so blurred that it's hard to determine authenticity. I always make the argument that there's no way for you to truly know a person in a very short period of a campaign season. And so we're forced into a predicament where we have to choose based on the superficial. And oftentimes, unfortunately, we're disappointed, at whatever the outcome is. The greatest thing that I think I'll continue to make the argument, in terms of myself, the current mayor, and the Republican candidate, what we've done has value. History has value for a reason. And if you look at historical record, my performance as an elected, the current mayor's performance, Janet Berman, has not had this opportunity. I'm willing to bet that the argument can be made, and I'll certainly make the argument that I've had a greater impact on our city legislatively than any other person involved in this race. It should be a testament going forward, not only to an understanding of what the most intimate issues are, what it means to have organic movement, to deal with people directly, to take what they say and bring it into fruition, bring the changes that they want to see legislatively or otherwise, demonstrates that a person who listens, who works with the people directly, who understands the issues, but not only that, can deliver despite any pushback. The three of the main pieces of legislation that I often talk about because they were game changing and because they took a long time to get done. There was so much pushback that each of them took almost 2 years to get done. And so in that respect, I think the process by which they came into fruition was very important. But alongside that, the very meaning of them, the essence of them are important. So I think to demonstrate understanding of what the issues are, the ability to deliver, I don't, with all due respect, I have no problem or no struggle making a decision. I can most certainly make a decision when it's required. And I've demonstrated that, and I hope that the people see and understand that. And if I get the opportunity, I'll do exactly that when mayor.
Well, let me ask you this. You talked about legislative achievements. What is the legislative achievement during your time as an elected that you're most proud of? What is your biggest legislative achievement that you're most proud of? Or the three that you named that you feel most proud of, because you said there were three. So you can give me the three or the one that you're most proud of that you directly had an impact on.
Yeah, and the ones that I mentioned, all of them are sponsored, but the one that I'm most proud of is the warrants for inspection that targets absentee landlords because of the impact that deplorable conditions have on kids. I did ban the box, I did local hiring, I did disorderly property, all which is about quality of life and safety, right? Work opportunity and family stability. But disorderly, when I got phone calls from persons who were crying on the phone, fear of retaliation from landlords who were not being responsive to their needs, code enforcement frustrated because they can't gain access to the apartment to see if there are real problems, to be able to eliminate those barriers and eliminate that red tape, to provide people some solution or some recourse for issues they struggled with for years, I say that was the greatest one because it helps the entire family.
Well, more to come. We'll hear from you soon. Business development. What would you say about that before we close?
80% of the employment or the workforce in the United States work for small business. Small business is very important. Provide an opportunity for, long-term sustainability, retention and expansion. All of that is very important. Support for small business is certainly paramount. I chaired economic development on the council for 10 years. I've always had great relationships and a great understanding of what's required in our business community. It'll be the same. I've had decent balance of providing for both people and business. And I always say to business that I support your business for as long as it's not at the expense of the people, and I stick to that.
Khalid Bey, Democratic candidate for mayor of the city of Syracuse. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, George.
Inspiration for the nation.